Nahum, Shalman, thank you very much for joining. And I'm excited. You're going to be talking about OpenTelemetry in Dropshot.
That is the plan. Can you hear me?
Yes, and we
Great.
can see your slide too.
Perfect. All right. Uh, so the purpose of this talk, I love dtrace, um, and I also love distributed tracing, and I think OpenTelemetry is really great. You all love dtrace. If there's anyone here who has never heard of distributed tracing, then if I found someone in the lucky 10,000 today, and that's successful, but also I do want to do this work. All right. Um, the context back in the day, when I was at OmniTI, there was an incident where a Rust application, sorry, pardon me, where a Perl application was misbehaving in production. And I was very fortunate that Theo Schlossnagel had put the USDT probes into Apache that was running on the servers that I had suddenly found myself debugging. And so this dtrace script that you can see on the side, which was preserved by Leon Fayer in a talk of his that is linked in the speaker notes, is something that I wrote in anger while missing out on Thanksgiving dinner. And it helped debug the problem. And the lesson I learned from this is very much echoed by my experiences using OpenTelemetry in recent time, and why I believe that it is very useful for application code. I think for high performance system applications, the stuff that Oxide is working on, you really need the no probe effect. Dtrace, you only turn it on when you need it. For high level applications, particularly when they are talking to each other over the network, it is really worthwhile to spend the performance and storage on capturing this information sort of all the time and being able to benefit from it. So yeah, I was staring at this output and seeing literally like these endpoints are much slower than the other endpoints, and saying to the developers, "Hey, please go fix those pieces of code first, because if we fix that, that'll help make things better before they sort of finished fixing the bug." Um, so that's how I ended up um, looking at these sorts of things. All right, so just sort of recapping, we had USDT in place, and I was very lucky that we had it there. Uh, and I had root access on those machines. I could log in and I could run dtrace. But today, I now run my applications often on top of a Kubernetes cluster that someone else manages. And my applications are both the client and a server. Um, and there's other people talking to me talking to other people. And just knowing what my application is doing is not enough to fully understand the system. So an abridged history of distributed tracing, linked to the article by John Willis that I stole this from. Originally, there was the Dapper at Google, and Zipkin at Twitter. I spent a few years working for Uber's self-driving car unit, ATG, which is where I was introduced to Jaeger. And now there was an open source project called Open Tracing that has now sort of become the tracing part of OpenTelemetry. And the two things I really want anyone looking at these slides right now to take away from this is the concept of a trace and a span. So the picture shows a trace. A trace is made up of multiple spans, and there's a parent-child relationship between spans. So you can see like this is a client span, and underneath it is the API span, and it does these things. And this ability to visualize a distributed system is very important, and also the ability to sort of to instrument and measure it and understand it. Uh, so, uh, why would I want to put OpenTelemetry into Dropshot? Um, I anticipate writing new software, and for any reason you might want to use Dropshot, the linked in the notes is the contract as code as contract, which I had misremembered as code as contract as code. So I had to go find it. Adam and Dave did a great talk explaining why you would want to build your applications this way. And having clean API boundaries between pieces of software is a really great thing. Um, and using Dropshot helps you do that really well. And like I said, I'm going to be writing software in distributed systems, and I want to be able to integrate into those systems. So Uh, Most recently, I worked on a piece of client software in Rust that was talking to Golang applications that were already emitting OpenTelemetry tracing spans. And so I was able to add OpenTelemetry to my application, and everything sort of is beautiful, and you can see it in the tracing systems. And if I write server software, I want similarly, regardless of what language, as long as the clients and services I speak to are using OpenTelemetry tracing, that we can all sort of see what the system is doing. All right, so demo time. I think I need to change my share real quick because I'm going to want to present just the whole browser if I can, please. Should be here. So hopefully you see my shell now. So I have um, Jaeger running. I have an OpenTelemetry collector running and a traffic front end. And I have a couple of pieces of software. I have this front end. Actually, I'll show the back end first. The back end, which is basically ripped off of one of the Oxide demos for Dropshot, where it's got the counter, and the only thing that's different is I have wired up the OpenTelemetry stuff to be listening and sending out traces, spans. Uh, and the other file is this front end, which again is the same file, just sort of hacked up. And I added an endpoint. Where did it go? Named /get. And what it's going to do, and it's littered with comments and skeletons of things I'm trying to get working, where I'm going to call into the front end, and then it's going to make a couple of calls to the back end to get the counter. So this is the code that I'm working with. It is still very much under development. If there's a off where people want to help me hack on this and get things actually working, that'd be lovely. So if I run the back end and run the front end, and I run curl in a way that has it emit some OpenTelemetry tracing headers as well, then if we go back to Jaeger, then if I look for traces, we can see a few different things. I didn't highlight. There's something which is in another slide, in the next slide, that will become important in a moment. You can see the client made a request to the front end, and I've named that something a little cleaner now. Now it's a Dropshot request. You can see that it did get of /get, and it was 200, whatever, and that it's from this Dropshot tracing, the Dropshot crate version. And then over here, I do have this. Here's this span that came from the front end that made a couple of requests to the back end. And again, those are Dropshot requests, and they were take /counter. They were exit 200, right? So you can see the shape of sort of traffic as it flows through the system. Sorry, wrong button. And the other thing that I'm going to highlight briefly, and then sort of talk about some other stuff, is I have these things that are from the tracing crate. And the tracing OpenTelemetry crate. So I'll talk a little bit more briefly, but I'm going to show the code because why not? So the tracing crate, and I actually named this feature Tokyo tracing instead. So if I've enabled my Tokyo tracing crate, if you use the tracing instrument macro, then the tracing crate will wire up a ton of stuff. And if you use tracing OpenTelemetry, you can get all that stuff shipped out using all your existing telemetry stuff. And so here's another one. And this one, you can see that I've actually annotated it to skip the fields that are coming in from the function call, but to actually annotate with things like that I might care about, like request method, URI, things like that. All right, so back to Chrome. So you can see how when we got into this request handle, I was able to see, like, yes, here's the headers that were accepted, that it sent, and the HTTP version that came through, all that stuff. So that's the little bit of technical demo I have. Again, I'm still actively hacking on this code, trying to get it to work properly. And someday maybe it will. There are some open questions. So if you, and linked in the slide in the speaker notes. The OpenTelemetry project is trying to decide right now whether to sort of stick with the APIs they've built out that are sort of mimicking the rest of the other operating system, the other programming language implementations of OpenTelemetry, or should they switch to the Tokyo tracing crate? I believe a maintainer works for Oxide these days. And if so, that would simplify. You could always just use the tracing way of setting up all the tracing information and then just export it via OpenTelemetry, which would make a lot of things much simpler, as you saw with the macro that I was using in the example. Um, Additionally, there's a discussion in the Dropshot project about moving to Tokyo tracing. Again, if Dropshot adopts tracing, then just having all of that stuff exported via tracing OpenTelemetry would probably wire up a ton of visibility into Dropshot applications very, very quickly and easily. And there's also an issue about looking into USDT tracing being more generic, which if it were, it is possible that then in USDT, one could implement the OpenTelemetry bits and then have it live there instead. But I don't know. Probably not. Yeah. So next steps. I'm probably going to keep hacking on this. I want this for myself. I'm doing my best to keep it all sort of gated behind features, so that if you compile and you don't enable it, then it's not in your code at all. But that if you do, then it's right there. And again, if I succeed, then I will open a PR. But if it is too invasive, then I will maintain a fork outside. And that is it. If there are, I haven't been looking at the Discord, so there we go. There's tons of stuff in there.
Thank you for this.
Yeah,
I think you got to most of the questions through the course of your talk. I would just say, like, this has already spawned chatter at Oxide. Like, this is exciting. We should use this. So a lot of abstract, in some cases, concrete enthusiasm. So really cool stuff. Multiple DMs saying like, "Hey, we should use this. Should we use this? Shouldn't we use this? Why are we using this?" So very cool stuff. Glad your work out, and thank you so much for presenting. This was delightful.